Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Authors Love Bookstores, presented by A Mighty Blaze. I'm Joe Moldover, author of the novel Every Moment After, and I am your host for today. Authors Love Bookstores is a weekly online program held every Wednesday. I host and produce alongside my friend and fellow writer, Kimberly Hensel-Lawrence. Our goal is to highlight indie bookstores across the US and Canada, to tell you what makes them so special, and to talk about what we can all do to support their ongoing survival. If you are with us live on Facebook or YouTube, please feel free to post a question in the comments and we will get to as many of them as we can. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Ryan La Sala. Ryan writes about surreal things happening to queer people. He is the author behind the riotously imaginative Reverie and the brilliantly constructed Bedazzled, both of which made the Kids Indie Next list. He has been featured in Entertainment Weekly, NPR, Tour.com, and one time, Shangela from RuPaul's Drag Race called him cute. It's a precious moment. Ryan is also co-host of the Celebrity Book Club podcast and a frequent speaker at events and conferences. When not writing, Ryan does arts and crafts, and if he's lucky, he sometimes remembers to film his escapades for his long-suffering YouTube channel subscribers. Ryan, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Also with us is Cass Moskowitz from Books of Wonder. Welcome, Cass, and thank you for being here.
My pleasure, genuinely. It's going to be so much fun.
So let me dive in. So, Ryan, we are here, the three of us are here together because you selected Books of Wonder as your beloved independent bookstore. So tell us about Books of Wonder. Tell us about what makes it special.
Oh my gosh. Books of Wonder has been like my dream bookstore for the longest time. Even before I moved to New York City, where I now live, I had such a clear idea of Books of Wonder because so many writers talk about them. I've been to so many events at Books of Wonder. They are truly like a keystone in like the book community in New York City. And to be such a thing, like that's a really hard thing to accomplish. Like you've got to be part of a community, and they really are. And then, even after sort of prizing them up high, I was lucky enough to get to do my own launches with Books of Wonder. My first book, Reverie, came out in 2019. And I chose Books of Wonder, desperately asked if they would host the launch for Reverie, and they were so accommodating and lovely. And I love to sort of add a little pizzazz into my events, and they were down for it. And so we had like big balloons. We had a drag queen that ran like a sing along to the tune of Wheels on the Bus, but like a drag edition, And since then, we've always had like just really good events together. And as an author, that's like really invaluable to have like a good relationship. And also on like a more casual note, like I pop in and say hi to Cass like all the time, which is great.
Yeah.
When I'm in the area and like getting bubble tea or something like that. And we like compare nail colors and outfits. And I find that to be like really precious, especially this past year when I haven't done a ton of like socializing to like still sort of have like people that you can see face to face. In publishing especially has been like really lovely. So yeah, I love Books of Wonder.
That's great. I love that.
Oh,
I mean, I love talking about events when we talk about independent bookstores. Ryan, you and I think, intersected briefly on our tours in 2019, and you have such a great fan base. You and I were on a panel together, and the people who were like there for you and who loved your books were just like wonderful. And I love talking about indie bookstore events and kind of like how they go and what is memorable about them. And Cass, I wonder if you would talk a little bit about events at Books of Wonder, what makes them special, and maybe whether there are any that kind of stick in your mind as especially unusual or surprising or just wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks so much, Ryan. You're going to make me cry. It was really sweet. Yeah, I love our store so much. Our events, so in the before times, our events are incredible. We have, Ryan, we have authors reach out, go through our event planning, usually through their publicists, and we get such incredible people. But in a weird, bright spot to this past year, virtual events have made it incredible to be able to reach out to authors that we normally wouldn't be able to. We've done events with, we did an event with Lainey Taylor and Jay Kristoff. Jay Kristoff is in Australia, and we got to do that because he didn't have to come here. And so that was really cool. And we have people in our comments constantly being like, hi from Germany, hi from India. And I'm like, I love that we can reach all these people now, because our events are really, really fun, and we try to make it special for the author or illustrator, and special for the audience. And so the fact that we can now reach this kind of audience is kind of awesome. But for one that likes, I'm really bummed I didn't actually get to go to the Reverie launch. I don't remember what it was. I think it was either on a day that I didn't work. Something happened and kept me from.
I think TJ was there, maybe.
It was definitely there. I think Zoe was there.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, there was some, I mean, I heard stories and I saw pictures and I was really bummed about it. So I feel like that would have been the most memorable. But we had, we had Cat Cho come for.
Love Cat Cho.
Wicked Fox. And her whole family dressed up as foxes with matching hats and tails. So they started coming in with bright orange shirts, and I was like, oh, that's cute. And then I saw the fox ears. I'm like, cool. And then more and more people were coming in, and we just had rows of orange shirts with fox ears. And I was like, we love a supportive family. That's incredible.
The theater of it.
It was so much. It was so fun. And Kat knew, but the fact that she was so chill, she came in, hi, I'm Kat Jo. I was like, oh, it's really nice to meet you. And then her family was like, we are here. And I was like, yeah, okay. I love that.
That's fabulous.
Yes.
We want people to be able to, part of the reason we're here is we want people to be able to go to the Books of Wonder website and pick up copies of books we've mentioned. Cass, mention the book title again, and we'll put it in the links.
Yeah, Wicked Fox by Kat Jo.
All right. So for all of our online viewers, head to booksofwonder.com and pick up a copy. Cass, keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I'm trying to think of I guess our virtual events have been so different because they're all just, we get to do more things because people can share screens, and we've had just last night we had an illustrator sort of show his process via slides and stuff like that. It's so awesome. So as far as virtual events go, we had, what's his name? Ryan Higgins, who writes a fantastic set of picture books. He writes a bunch of picture books, but his most famous are the Bruce series. Mother Bruce is the first one. He did a live drawing, and I watched it happen, and I'm still calling witchcraft for just a couple lines here and a little circle there, and then his main character was there, and I was like, you do that again in slow motion? And he did, and it was crazy cool. So I think watching Ryan Higgins do his live drawing was just, and we have had that in person, which is really fun. We'll get a giant easel and stuff, but 3 lines, a circle, and 2 more circles, and then fully fledged cartoon bear. And I was like, cool. I could never have been nice.
I love it. While we're on the topic of events, Ryan, let me come back to you. So, I mean, you're talking a little bit about your launch for Reverie, which sounds completely amazing. But talk to us a little bit more about events, especially at independent bookstores. What makes them special? If there are any others that are especially memorable to you, or you've been in the audience, just what do you think is that chemistry that makes those such unique types of encounters?
Yeah, the way I would describe it is just because independent bookstores tend to be I feel like they're always tucked into these really cool spaces. The event that they're able to put on is a black box show as opposed to a big stadium production. And as a result, you're right up and close with the authors themselves. Oftentimes, you're part of an audience of maybe 30 at most people. And that means though that you're having a different interaction with the author, right? You're actually kind of in conversation with them or their conversation partner, and you can ask your questions and then stay after and get to meet them. And that's what I love about indie bookstores specifically and the events that they put on. I know that when I guess I'm still in many ways an aspiring author, but when I was first entering publishing, one of the main things that I someone recommended I do, and that I followed them up upon for advice, was going to as many author events as I could. And at the time I was in Boston, so I would go to Porter Square Books right down the street. And I would go to like Brookline Booksmith, and I attended everything from like a really small, like intimate event with, I think actually Kat Cho and Claribel Ortega did like a DP Pitt panel at Porter Square Books. And it was great because like I'm meeting the people that like are my icons, but in a really like friendly setting, which is totally awesome. I think the biggest thing I went to was like an event for like Lee Bardugo at Brookline Booksmith, which was so packed that, and that store is 2 different floors, they had to put half of the event upstairs. Lee wasn't even upstairs. They just piped her microphone through like the loudspeakers, and we were all just, it was really kind of fun though. We literally like, it was a bookstore full of people sitting on the ground, just listening to an interview with Lee Bardugo, allegedly somewhere else in the building. And oh my gosh, it was, and then after though, Lee stayed and we all got in line, and we were probably some of the last people that she talked to, but she was so excited to be there and so friendly and just like so warm. And I was like, you must be so exhausting. And you wouldn't know it because like the event was just so energizing for her too. So I love events like that. I love getting to witness a cool and intelligent conversation. And then I also love getting to kind of meet the people after. And as for like an author side of it, putting on events with a bookstore is so different because they're really up for anything. And that for me is a good thing because I kind of will make people do anything. I've had drag queen performances. I've done like live arts and crafts demonstrations. I've done musical numbers at my own book events, and having like a bookstore staff that's just ready to roll with it has always been kind of integral to me. I think getting away with like the theatricality that I like add into all of my events.
Oh my God, I love that. That's so great. So after events, which are amazing, the other thing I always like to ask about is about sort of the whole experience of hand selling when I'm talking to a bookseller. I think one of the many things that makes independent bookstores really special is that like you walk in and you discover new things all the time. It's something that's different from going to like a big box. It's different from like an online retailer or something like that. Like you go in, you actually talk to the bookseller, and you find something new, or you're matched up with something new. This is something that I am terrible at. I can never tell somebody what they might like to read. It's just like, it's not a skill set that I have. So Cass, like this is a question that I have, is how do you go about matching somebody up with a book or hand selling a book? Like, do you start with them and like what they want, or do you have like a bunch of books in your back pocket that you are like ready to push?
Definitely a combination of both. Especially working with kids know what they want. So they will come in with a list and requirements. So you have to be ready for the most specific requests that are usually the most fun, really, because they're so passionate about it. Will kids be like, I like dinosaurs, but I also really like the 16th century. Great that. And I'm like, it's funny, we kind of have a book like that. There's a really fun series called Knights versus Dinosaurs that's literally about the Knights of the Round Table fighting dinosaurs. So like, we gotcha. But you definitely have to know a good amount of the stock. And my best sort of recommendation is, to like new booksellers would be like, know the most popular series in your store and know a like comparative title. Because popular series, people ask about it all the time, like, oh, what are kids reading today? What are they looking for? And I can throw out the popular titles. But if you have a kid coming in, like, I finished all of XYZ, what can you give me now? You want to have like a title off the top of your head for like the big ones, at least for that. As far as books that I toss at people, I pretty much have a giant pile of queer books that I'm just read. If a kid looks into, I'm like, take all of them. We currently have a trans and non-binary like display shelf at our front desk, and I like there are kids that'll interact with that and be like, oh, do you have anything more like this? And I'm like, I got you. I know what you're into. That's fine. So yeah, I currently one of my newest favorites is, it just came out on Tuesday, and I got to read the arc like 4 months ago, and I've been dying to recommend it to people. So it's called The Strange Worlds Travel Agency. It is by L.D. Lipinski. It literally came out on Tuesday. It is about a kid who finds out that there's this travel agency in her town that all the suitcases go to different magical lands, that they're like interplanar travel agency. It's so fun. It's like the exploration of different worlds is really exciting. And one of the main characters is trans in a way that like, it's not important to the story. He just is. And you love that. You love to see that. So that one for sure I've been waiting for. Which would also be my other thing is like, as booksellers, we're really lucky to get access to advanced copies of things.
Yeah.
Keep those in mind, because it's hard, because you'll read it and then like 7 months later, someone will ask about it and you're like, did it come out yet? I don't remember. But like if you keep sort of a log of what you've read as it comes out, you can recommend the newest thing because you knew about it, 6 months ago, which is the whole point of ARCs. So yeah, I mean, every kid is different, but like I said, they usually know what they want. It's more when like parents will come in shopping for a kid they don't know necessarily, that it gets a little tricky, because you don't want to give them something completely popular because they probably have it, but you also don't want to go too like underground where this kid's going to be like, why did you get me this?
Right.
But yeah, I'm lucky that I work with kids. They tend to really know what they want as far as genre and things like that. And then you just explore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm just reminding the audience, so Strange Worlds Travel Agency sounds amazing. It's reminding the audience that there's only one way you should be obtaining that book, and that is by going to booksofwonder.com to pick up a copy. Unless you happen to be in New York City, you can physically go to the store. Would be your alternative. Cass, the answer to this question may be no, but have you ever just been completely stumped by a customer request? Like, is there an unanswerable question?
Completely. I'm stumped by this one. The closest I've gotten is a lot of times people will come in, because we're a children's bookstore, asking about books from their childhood, and it gets foggy in descriptions. Because people will be like, there was this book that I read and I really loved it. It had a red cover. Definitely like a cat in there at some point.
Had a wizard.
And I do like, I'm not daunted by it because I'm excited. Like, I love the look on people's faces when either I figure it out or like they find it or something. So I want to help them, but sometimes I can't. Right. Sometimes you're like, there was fairies in it. And I'm like, cool. Anything else? And they're like, no. I'm like, good luck.
That sounds. I would be awful at that, by the way. I can't believe that you're able to solve that. I would be stumped immediately.
I mean, first of all, I'm pretty good at Googling at this point, which I feel like a lot of people could do. They assume it's my knowledge coming out when I'm behind the computer. I'm Googling the same way you could. It's fine. It's a little secret. But sometimes, especially if it's someone sort of my age, in the rough 20 to 40 age bracket, I happen to have a decent knowledge of like, our older picture books and stuff. And sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I read that when I was a kid. We totally have it. Or it's out of print or whatever it is. But Google's your friend. And we have access to a couple other like publishing sites that I can put keywords in. And then it's up to like a fun trying to figure out how to properly Google. It's a skill that I have honed since I started working here. We just had recently someone came in looking for a book about a hippopotamus who was having who was like really sad. And I was like, okay, I was like typing like, sad hippopotamus. We were going through all these things and I found something that was published in the 80s, but she was like that like it was old when I was a kid. And so I was like, okay, so that's too early. And then she found it actually. It was, I actually don't remember I think if it's like Hippopotamus's Bad Day. It's been out of print for a solid 40 years. But it was exactly like she was getting more and more specific. And I was like, you're eliminating all the things I'm finding, but you've got enough to find it.
Yeah.
It was like black and white drawings, but there was also like pink. I was like, okay, so that, cuts out a lot. And then yeah, she totally found it. And I was like, okay, cool. So that's the hardest one, is when people will come in asking,
That's like such a great answer to the question, because I totally have like a bunch of books in the back of my mind where that's exactly what I would be saying to you. I would be saying, like, I have one in my mind that does have a cat, and like I don't know that much more about it.
Yeah.
Ryan, let me come to you. I mean, first of all, I've got a couple questions about book recommendations for you and like what you've been reading and what you want to recommend. But before I get to that, I mean, do you have books from your like childhood that are in the back of your mind like that, like some vague like cat or hippopotamus book that for you was sort of like maybe like the foundation of your love of like children's or YA lit?
Yeah, so I feel like I read a lot of obscure stuff because I was really like cover focused. The thing is that I also was really into like manga when I was a kid. Like a lot of my really formative reading was in comic books and manga and things that like I couldn't find the half the stuff that I read because describing plot lines in anime and manga is totally different. It's not just like, oh, there was a sad hippopotamus. It's like, okay, well, there's a princess on the moon, but she dies and then she's resurrected 2,000 years later and has to defeat people made out of gemstones, which is the plot to Sailor Moon.
Me that one.
Right, and so like they're so specific that people are like, what are you talking about? But the books that like when I was a kid, the books that I was really drawn to, and I actually did this recently where like I went back and found them just to like verify that they were real. But the Jewel Kingdom series, it was about these girls that were like princesses in like a magical land, and each of them had like a jewel attributed to them. And the reason I like those books is because they were at the Scholastic Book Fair and they came with little gemstones, like little accessories that you would wear. So I don't know if I gave two shits about the book, but I really wanted the gemstones, and that's what I reached for. That, and then recently I had to verify with somebody that the Velveteen Rabbit is like as heartbreaking as I remember it. I remember that book being like deeply melancholic, and then I went back and like found the edition that I used to have, and the drawings were just as like somber as I remembered them being. But it was the same thing of like, oh, I don't just want this one book. I want like the edition or like the year or like the print year, just so I can look at like the pictures that I was looking at as like a little kid. And we did find it, but I can't remember it now. But I was like a kid in like the 90s, and it was it's an older book then. So yeah, those are probably the first. I think that like the Velveteen Rabbits, I think is the first book that I like really remember.
Yeah. And Ryan, do you have contemporary books that you're recommending right now, things that are coming out right now that you'd want the audience to think about?
Actually, interestingly, I was at the Astoria Bookshop a few weeks ago signing for an event that I was doing with them, and one of the booksellers recommended Ring Shout, which is a really slim like. It could be considered horror. It's adult. It's not in the young adult genre, but it was awesome, and it was a recommendation that was like handed to me. They recommended Ninth House by Lee Berdugo, which is also great, and I would also recommend. And then Ring Shout, which is like sort of a lesser known title, and it was awesome. Like I basically told them, I was like, I want something that's like really off the walls horror, and that's like what they handed me. And I'm writing horror right now that. Sometimes, I'm like, is this a little bit too out there? But then reading that book, I was like, oh, I'm like well within the expectable boundaries of what like a horror book can do. Because that book pushes all of the limits and does it so well.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, P. DeJelly Clark is the author. Thank you, Margaret.
That's fabulous. Let me ask you, Cass, let me come back to you and talk to you a little bit about sort of what has been going on in the store over the past, really over the past couple of months, over the past year. So Books of Wonder is open now for foot traffic, which is awesome. Tell us what this time has been like, and tell us how the bookstore has adapted and survived.
Yeah, definitely. As with everybody else and with everything else, insane. So we closed when the ordinances came in March of last year, 2020, whenever that happened.
Yeah, 1 year ago.
That year that was also 17 years ago.
Yeah.
Time. And we came back when I think we were going into like phase 2 or something. I don't remember the exact number. We started opening up for appointments for private shopping in June. of 2020. And then after July 4th, we were allowed to open up to foot traffic. And so since then, it's been sort of steadily rising. First few weeks, barely anyone knew we were open, but also like people were still uncomfortable with it. We still have the option of curbside pickup even now. And so that was more of our clients, but a few people would come in and be like, "Oh, we're so glad you're open." And we were like, "We are too." And obviously through the pandemic, we had our incredible web sales rep who was amazing. I mean, she handled all of our web orders mostly. And then we had someone in store doing shipping if they wanted like physically, like something we could pull off of our shelves that were dwindling. So we did have that, but yeah, people were super excited when we opened our doors again, as we were. And we have obviously all the protocol, masks required, hand sanitizers at every station. We have those like plastic barriers up by the register, which is still really weird for me. But recently, in the past few months, it's definitely picked up. We're pretty much back to what I remember. Weekends are always our busiest time. Weekdays after school lets out is, where all the kids come. It's really exciting. And we're a little lucky, bittersweetly, so that libraries still aren't quite open yet. And so kids are still coming to us for school projects and things like that. So, I mean, I hope libraries get to open soon for their sake. But it's kind of cool because we do have the library in our area that I know people have sort of shifted coming to us. But luckily the store itself, we've, like Ryan said, one of the best parts about our store is that we have a community behind it. And specifically, I work at the Uptown store. So our store has 2 locations in New York, Chelsea area, which is our flagship store. And I work in the Uptown store, which is sort of a branch off. And we're in a very residential area. We have regulars that I see daily. I'll see them on the street and like wave to them. It's very cute. So we have a community behind us of people that will, that were coming back and excited to come back and excited to tell their friends to come back to us. So it's been good. It's been, it's getting back to something akin to normal. That's kind of all we can hope for, as the summer comes. We had a kid yesterday buy like $200 worth of books for summer camp. And I was like, okay. Yeah, no, same. That's what I said. I was like, my mom let me get 1 book for summer camp, but cool.
That's amazing. That kid's going to make no friends. They're just going to be reading all day at summer camp.
Funny you say that. She came in with 2 other friends, and they were like talking about how they're going to pass, like which books they're going to read first and who's going to read what first and what they're going to pass to each other. And I was like, oh, so you're not going to make new friends.
But these are lifetime. That is friendship.
I was so into it. That's
amazing.
So yeah, and then, that kind of stuff. And we're looking, as summer progresses, start for school things. So it feels a little more real now. It's still a little weird, but we've gotten a decent amount of our people back. And then downtown, we had a move over COVID. We moved 1 block over. So everyone's sort of pretty familiar with our 18th Street location. We're literally block over on 17th Street. But even that, it's, reestablishing like, oh no, I thought you guys closed. And it's like, no, we're just 1 block around. But they're also, picking up as it is. They get more of our tourist central. We're kind of a famous bookstore, and the location itself is Union Square. It's a little more tourist than residential. So they're picking back up again, and it's really great. And we're lucky. We're really lucky that we have this base of customers that are willing to support us in crazy times when we need it most. So it's really, really cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. Ryan, I have a specific question for you from the audience, which is about your celebrity book club and whether you can talk to us a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to. So many people don't know this, and I'm about to make your gosh darn day, but Tyra Banks wrote a book. She wrote a dystopian book, a dystopian fantasy book way back in like 2012 or something like this, at like the height of the dystopia bubble, and published it. And the book came out, hit the New York Times bestseller list, and then vanished. It had one single printing, and to this day, you cannot buy a new copy of this book. They are rare. You have to find used copies. They're in a lot of libraries. You can get copies pretty easily, but like you cannot, like there's no ebook even. You have to buy a physical copy of this book. The book is called Model Land, and it's about this girl whose name is Tookie de la Creme, who gets selected to go to like basically like the Hunger Games version of like the Capitol, but with supermodels with superpowers. And, you know, it's Tyra Banks, so there's a certain amount of like eccentricity just baked into the plot. Anyhow, my friend Claribel Ortega, another author who is the author of Ghost Squad and the upcoming Witchlings, very, very popular in the middle grade realm, called me one day during the pandemic because we were looking for like a project to do together. And Claribel was like, do you want to start a podcast where we read Model Land chapter by chapter and like really dissect it for its literary merits and, you know, I won't call them failings, but like unmerits, because it's Tyra Banks. Like, you know, it's like it's like a publicity stunt. So that's how we started Celebrity Book Club. It's a podcast where we tackle like books written by celebrities, fiction, not biographies, not autobiographies, like fiction, written by celebrities. Because oftentimes like a celebrity is told, hey, you can make a lot of money if you just write a book. And they'll write like a loosely fantastical version of their own life. And it's a fascinating publicity phenomenon that I feel like no one talks about in the book world. The Jenner, Kylie and Kendall Jenner, they wrote a dystopian novel like years ago that you can read. You can read this, like the Jenners, before they abandoned it and became like, you know, who they are today. But like, I don't know, we are now tackling just, you know, the job of reading all these books. And it's really funny. The podcast is a mix of actual like dissection of the books, but then also like we go into what it's like for actual, I don't want to say actual authors, but like, you know, normal authors that don't have a ton of celebrity, like how getting published creates a lot of hurdles for that, and like what we could and could not get away with if, you know, we tried to produce a book called Model Land about superpowered models that have no magical rules, but like can walk through walls and cause earthquakes and like all this other stuff. So it's a lot of fun. You guys can subscribe to it. We are in the middle of a short break right now because Claribel and I both have books due, but we are resuming soon with a bunch of like new surprises. So definitely subscribe, and you should be seeing some updates soon.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you have like future seasons planned. So it sounds like you've got stuff coming.
Yeah, we actually, so between like all of us, we're sort of expanding our scope to not just be celebrity books, but sort of just like big, splashy books that just deserve like some dissection. So like Handbook for Mortals is a really good example. If anyone's familiar with like the scandal surrounding that book, there's a whole story. You can find it online. I won't go through it now, but like not necessarily written by a celebrity, but definitely written for the purposes of celebrity. And so, yeah, we have a bunch of stuff planned and a bunch of seasons planned. But the fact of the matter is Model Land by Tyra Banks is like 600 pages. So we've got a long ways to go before we could like get through it, because we're trying to be thorough. But as soon as that's over, yeah, we've got a lot of other stuff that we want to do. And people send us recommendations all the time. Like all of our listeners will send us like just the most outlandish books you never knew could exist. It'll be like, you know, Guy Fieri wrote like, you know, a book of poems about like grilled cheeses or something like that. And like that would count. We'll read it. Please tell me that's true. It's not. I just made that up, but it is about as true as anything else that I make up. So it could be true. I may not know.
I feel like I would buy that book right away.
100%. Right? Yeah, right. And we think of it as like a favor. Like I think Tyra Banks would be thankful that we are getting her hopefully back into print, right? Like she should. I think she'll be thankful for the work that we're doing on her behalf.
I can't believe she got 600 pages, but I mean, I guess whatever. When you're Tyra Banks, that's how it works.
I remember when Model Land came out. That was roughly the same time that Hilary Duff and maybe Jessica Simpson, a third one, Laura Conrad, Hilary Duff, yes, and Tyra Banks all came out with books in like the same year, and it was like, It's like, yeah, they all did the stunt. It's like the Sparky Pilastri from Bring It On, who taught everyone the same routine on the West Coast. Like that person went around to all of these like Hollywood people and was like, write a book. And they all did. And now we're reading them, which I don't think was ever the intention of these books, but too bad.
Oh my God, that's so good. So to the viewers, subscribe to Celebrity Book Club for sure, wherever you get your podcast, because it's amazing. Ryan, believe it or not, that does segue into the question I was going to ask you, strangely, which is going back to coming out of the pandemic. So like you are this like deeply creative person. So like you write, you sing, you podcast, you do arts and crafts. I mean, you were just like intensely creative. So many of the creative people I know have felt very stifled during the COVID pandemic, have had a very difficult time being productive and being creative and actually engaging. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about whether you have been able to be creative, and if so, what do you think the key to that was?
Yeah, I think the key for me is that now as like a full-time author and creative, of course, my creativity is coupled with productivity, but fundamentally as a person, my creativity has never been about being productive because I fundamentally get a lot of gratification out of making stuff. I've managed to turn it into a career, but I've been doing all of this stuff long before it was ever something that earned me money. And writing is sort of the thing that I can do for 8 hours a day. And at the end of it, I'm more energized than when I sort of initially sat down. And I'm really privileged to be able to do that, to kind of call the thing that I love the most my job. And I did have to sacrifice a lot of things to kind of align those two things and make it work financially. But the pandemic has sort of been, for me, in this weird inverse way, like a real boon to all of the projects that I never had time to do because I was either traveling for like book tour stuff or I had my other job for a long time. But the pandemic sort of gave me back a lot of time that I probably would have been spent doing other things. And I don't like being idle. Like if I'm sort of still for too long, like if I don't make something for too long, like that's when I feel kind of bad and kind of trapped. And so I've always sort of created my way out of different problems in my life. Reverie, my first book, was started as a high schooler because I was being handed books that were totally absent of queer people. And instead of sort of settling for that, I created a book for myself and then fought to get it published. Same thing with Bedazzled. Bedazzled is about a breakup. And it's because I went through a breakup and I wanted to write about it. And so I created something sort of off of that. And then same thing with like arts and crafts and events and all of the other stuff that I do. Oftentimes I create in response to sort of dissatisfaction with the reality around me as a way to sort of externalize like the dreams in my mind. So the pandemic was sort of nice in a weird way because it totally took away like the FOMO that you often feel when you have to choose yourself over, everyone else. Because no one, we couldn't see other people. And it kind of gave me sort of relinquished a lot of like free time back to me and meant that I could kind of focus on stuff without feeling bad or neglectful of like social plans, which I oftentimes do feel if I choose my writing or if I choose my crafts instead of, the people in my life, which I do often.
That's a great answer. Side note, the audience is still very excited about the podcast. Margaret is very excited, if you can see on the screen, about episode 6.
Yes!
Does she have to listen to 1 through 5, or can you just jump into episode 6?
So the book makes zero sense, and so you really could just jump in wherever. Like the book is unhinged, but we are going sequentially through it. Like episode 1 is chapter 1, and so on and so forth. At a certain point, we just start collapsing multiple episodes into single chapters because like there are entire chapters where Tyra Banks just describes like a buffet of food. Nothing happens, and so we were like, okay, Tyra, like we gotta get. We're on page like 200 and the plot has not started. So like, you can really listen to wherever, but if you really want to know, if you want to keep up, just try to start at the beginning.
Okay. So that is for Margaret has another question for Cass, which I'm going to put up here. Do NYC bookstores have an esprit de corps, or are there fracture lines getting in the way? That's an interesting question, actually. Do you have any thoughts about that?
What that is.
Pretend I'm a person who doesn't know what that means, because I totally do know what that means, but I don't.
Who knows what
I don't know what it means. Tell me.
I was like, I know the brand is free. They sell.
Oh. So I think he's sort of asking like whether there's like a sense of like camaraderie and like are you all in it together and do you all sort of like help each other out, or is there like a rivalry where you're like all of the indie bookstores are like the sharks in the jets or whatever, and you're like sort of like fighting late at night out on the street.
First of all, I wish if there
That would
was
be great.
a lottery. Good Lord, do I wish I could have a musical number where I come out snapping?
Uh-huh. And then you guys and like Books Are Magic would sort of have some sort of like a thing.
I want to see. First of all, interesting question. Thank you for teaching me a new phrase. Love that. Not really. It's not an exciting answer. I know people kind of want it to be like, yeah, oh man, we hate those guys. First of all, we're a children's only bookstore, so there's certain places we can't cater to people. I mean, not even indies. There's a Barnes & Noble down the block, and if there's a book that we can't get because it's very adult, I will tell people to go there because we can't help you. So there's definitely a camaraderie in that we're all indies. We're all fighting against the same thing. Amazon is our devil, and so we're all fighting against that together. Whether there's a little like, oh, you went to that one versus this one, probably a bit. Nothing outward or harsh, more just like, we're all struggling and there's only so many people to give what we need. But also, it's a city of a whole bunch. I'm going to pretend I know a number that's the population of New York. I was going to say something and then I was like, don't say a number out loud. It's a really, really big city.
It's a lot of people.
We can all be here and not be worried. Smaller cities probably have a harder time, but we're very lucky that in New York, like I said, we're on the Upper West Side. There's not that many indies here. There were more, and we hate to see it go. Like when the places around us closed, I'm not happy that people will come in and be like, oh, I used to go to whatever store and now I come to you. Like that doesn't make me happy. Like it's a bummer that place closed. Yeah. I'm glad we can help you, but so it's not like a rivalry in which I want anything bad to happen. Like we need indies. We need more than one indie. We need so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to buy a book, you might as well buy it from Books of Wonder, right?
Indeed, from bookselwonder.com, which segues me into reminding people that you can pick up a signed copy of Bedazzled by Ryan at bookselwonder.com. Perhaps you already have a copy. You don't have a signed copy, so head over and pick one up. We're actually running down on time, which is amazing because this is going by super fast. There is a question I want to toss out there for either one of you to answer, or both of you, or neither if you have nothing to say. But a lot of the people who watch our program are writers or aspiring writers. And one thing that I think is always interesting is the way that sort of writers interact with bookstores. It's kind of an interesting relationship, right? Because we all love bookstores, but also we need bookstores. We want bookstores to push our books. There are so many books out there. Why not put mine at the top of the pile? So I wonder if either one of you have anything to say about the way that authors engage with indie bookstores and sort of the most effective and appropriate way to do that, or conversely, what really, really does not work. We've had some good stories on this program about authors going way off the rails trying to get attention from indie booksellers. So just a jump ball for either one of you, if you have thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing is don't be shy about it. I've never seen wanting attention for your craft is not a bad thing. I guess there's probably a way to do it inappropriately, but luckily I haven't really seen that. Don't be shy about it. If you have a book that comes out and you don't see it on our shelves, or you do see it on our shelves and you want to be like, hey, I wrote this. We love when authors come in. We definitely have ways that you can reach out. We primarily deal with publicists, especially when it comes to events and things like that. But if you as an author want to get your book out there and want to talk about it, just come in and talk to us. Don't be shy about that. Don't think that there's any sort of, oh, we have enough authors on our shelves. We don't need a new one. We love debuts. Some of my favorite moments are when authors will, like, people will come in and they'll be like excited about some book and I'm like, oh yeah, that one just came out. They're like, I know, I wrote it. And I'm like, what? And it's like a really cool feeling because I get to share in that excitement of like their publishing moment. I've gotten to take pictures of people with their books where they got to see it for the first time on a shelf and it was our shelves. There's nothing I could never be mad about someone wanting that. So yeah, don't be shy about it. Don't be worried about it. Obviously, if you have a publicist, that's, I'm sure Ryan can talk more about this, but like that's what they're there for. Your publicist is the one. You should be your biggest hype man or hype person. So make sure they're getting the word out for sure. But if, like I said, if you want to come in, if you want to talk about it, if you have swag or things like that, authors will drop off books, like bookmarks or things that they may love. That we love that. So
that's such like a generous take. Like you're being so generous and sort of open-hearted about it, because I think like not all booksellers necessarily always feel that way. Like it's so wonderful to hear your take. One of the problems for writers, obviously, like many of us are very introverted people, and so sort of like going out there and meeting people and pushing our books can be challenging. Ryan, like you might be perhaps like you are secretly an introvert, but like I think that you are generally, and when I was with you at a live event, like I think you are very good at engaging with your audience and publicizing your work. I mean, do you have any advice for authors who are rolling out their first books in terms of how to get attention and how to get their work in front of more people's eyeballs?
Yeah, I think the thing that I recommend to writers, even before they finish their book, I'm always like, you need to figure out how to talk about your book in a concise way, because eventually, hopefully, God willing, you're going to be put in the position of talking with other people in the industry, and they're going to say, like, what's your book about? And if you're like, well, I don't know, it's like really probably like so stupid, but like there's a dragon and the dragon's a princess secretly, but she's like not really like, and if that's how like a writer's mind oftentimes thinks, because you start at the beginning. But no, you got to know how to pitch your book. You got to know how to talk about your work, and you also need to really I think there's no shame in really believing in yourself and understanding that what you're doing is super freaking cool, and putting some energy behind the way you talk about yourself and the confidence that you have in your work, and also why your work matters. And the reason that I start my advice there is because that's what a publicist does. A publicist, when they're talking about your book, they are talking like it's the coolest book in the world. Here's why. Here's who needs this book. And it sounds like really cheesy when you're doing it yourself to like kind of practice that, but it is so worthwhile, because basically what you're doing is you're collapsing the distance between the enthusiasm and intimate knowledge of the work that you have, and that of a bookseller who wants all that information so that they can better hand that book to the exact reader that wants it and needs it when they come in, saying something as vague as, I want a book about dinosaurs in like the 1800s, right? Like, booksellers have such a hard job, but if you make it easy for them by kind of giving them the quick idea of what your book is for and what it's about, like you're doing the work of a publicist. And not everyone has a publicist. Even if you're traditionally published, oftentimes like you, the author, you are your own hype person. Sometimes there's no budget put behind the publicity of your book. And so it's worth understanding how a publicist operates and even adapting some of those practices when you go into a situation where you would have wished you had a publicist, but you don't. You're on your own. So learning how to talk about yourself, learning how to talk about your books, and being enthusiastic and sort of confident in the work that you're doing, I think goes a really long way in kind of enabling the people around you to do the same things on your behalf.
That's a great answer. I love that. I think that's perfect. We are running up against the clock. Cass, I'm going to ask you one last question. This is one that we usually go out with our bookseller. It's a finish the sentence, fill in the blank. So I'm going to set it up, and then you just tell me how you finish it. Running a successful bookstore is part hard work, part luck, and part what else?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. Community.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be here if we didn't have that. The community of our, like, physically our location, but also the authors and the readers that come and support the indies that we have. Now it's 100% that, all that other stuff is really important, of course, but it's entirely community for sure.
Great. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think that's what everybody's been missing. while stores have been closed. And I'm hoping that that's what we're going to find this summer. Total pleasure speaking to the two of you. To the audience, just as a reminder, Bedazzled is on shelves now. Signed copies are on shelves at Books of Wonder. Books of Wonder is open, and if you're not lucky enough to be in New York City, you can go to booksofwonder.com to pick it up. Keep up with Ryan La Sala at ryanlasala.com for news, including news about the forthcoming book in summer 2022, The Honeys. Ryan, do you want to give us the very quick elevator pitch on that, since you were just talking about how you describe books effectively?
Absolutely. So I haven't nailed it on this one yet, but it's about a gender fluid teen named Mars who wakes up one night and his sister is suddenly home from summer camp and she's trying to kill him. And he accidentally kills her in this ensuing battle. And now it's up to him to figure out what happened at summer camp that turned his sister into this unrecognizable person who attacked him in the night. And he thinks it has to do with the group of girls that she was slowly becoming friends with who call themselves the Honeys because they're beautiful, they're so sweet, they're charismatic, and a little hypnotizing, and they take care of a hive of bees behind their cabin that has been part of the camp for hundreds of years. And so he's got to figure out the connection between all of these things before potentially the same fate occurs to him.
I think you've got the pitch down. I think that's it. The Honeys is summer 2022 from Scholastic. Everybody keep up with it. Go to booksofwonder.com. Thank you both so much for being here with me today. It's been a complete pleasure to talk to both of you. To the audience, thank you for being with us once again. We are back here same time next week. Until then, stay well and keep reading.